The upcoming Avengers Endgame is bringing with it the end of everything we know so far in regards to the status quo of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The newly dubbed Infinity Saga will come to a close with the original members of the Avengers bowing out of the limelight, paving the way for a new team, a perhaps more powerful team. How exactly do I figure that that'll happen? Well, stick around and I'll tell you about it. Look, I think it goes without saying that Infinity War sort of left the MCU in a fairly unfortunate situation. After Thanos snapped his fingers, in a way that's pretty much impossible given that he was wearing a metal glove, but never mind that, half of our favorite heroes were turned to dust, wiping them out of existence. Now, who did this leave us with? Basically, we still have the original Avengers: Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Hawkeye, Black Widow, and the Hulk, along with a small handful of other heroes, including Ant-Man, War Machine, Nebula, and Rocket. Sure, that's most of the heavy hitters in terms of box office success, but power-wise, things aren't looking stellar. But I'm not here to talk about how things are looking going into Endgame. It's pretty safe to assume that our heroes will prevail in that film, albeit probably with a few casualties along the way. No, I am here to talk to you about how things are going to look long-term. Because even if the Avengers defeat Thanos, there are bound to be even greater threats on the horizon that will challenge the heroes down the road. Off the top of my head, the Celestials could cause some issues, Kang the Conqueror is out there, maybe, and now that the Disney Fox deal is all done, Galactus could pop up. Point is, the future of the MCU will more than likely bring with it an even greater threat than Thanos. I mean, it does kind of have to, since I doubt that the franchise would want to de-escalate things. Kind of counterintuitive. But with all the changes that we've seen in the MCU since 2012's The Avengers, I gotta wonder if even the idea behind the Avengers could still work. The answer? Not in the same way that it was originally intended. The team was famously formed back in 2012 during their first ever team-up film at the end of Phase 1, and over the course of the next 4 years, they accomplished quite a bit, including stopping Ultron at the Battle of Sokovia. However, that battle would ultimately lead to the downfall of the team, as the Sokovia Accords were enacted largely due to the aftermath of that event, as well as the deaths of a few Wakandan diplomats in some other unrelated event. Around the time of Age of Ultron, we also saw the first major change in the Avengers lineup, with Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Hawkeye stepping away from the main roster, with Scarlet Witch, War Machine, Falcon, and Vision taking their place. One could argue that that moment is when the Avengers began their downfall, once the original team no longer worked together as a whole. What one can't really argue with, however, is that 2016's Captain America Civil War saw the real end of what we knew as the Avengers. After that film, Cap, Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Falcon became wanted fugitives, and Tony Stark had to step back into action, taking the lead of the weakest version of the team yet, which was essentially just him, War Machine, and Vision. Heck, even Spider-Man turned down being on the team. When your protege doesn't even want to be part of your superhero club, you're kind of in trouble. This fracturing of the team led to catastrophic failure in Infinity War, as instead of facing Thanos as a unified force, they instead tried fighting him on two separate fronts, which led to, well, it led to this.
Steve?
No matter how things go in Endgame, whether the team comes together to defeat Thanos or not, things are going to change for them. Mainly because several of the core members of the team are played by actors whose contracts are up after this film. Robert Downey Jr. is at the end of his contracted period, and while he has re-signed with Marvel a couple of times in the past, we haven't gotten any word on whether or not he's planning on doing so again. Captain America himself is also at the end of his obligation, and Chris Evans has publicly said that he's done playing Captain America, at least for a little while. So yeah, things will have to change, or else there will be a massive hole in the roster. And while Black Widow, Hulk, Scarlet Witch, Vision, and others may pop in for an occasional visit, the team is not going to be the same. But it will still continue forward, with the likes of Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange, as well as a few others. Honestly, this could be one of the most powerful iterations of the team that we've ever seen, especially once once Shang-Chi enters the fray. But before we get to that, there are some logistical questions that need to be ironed out first. First up is the idea that the team needs to be unified. This will probably be taken care of pretty handily by the events of Endgame itself. I honestly can't see a situation where that movie ends and the team, in whatever form it ends up being, is not unified after having to come together to fight Thanos. Honestly, I don't think that would be the main problem that this future version of the team will have to face. That will probably wind up being something that most of us have to face on a daily basis, that being money. See, the current word on the street is that Tony Stark is probably going to bite the big one in Avengers Endgame, or at the very least will be put into retirement, which will leave the Avengers with a bit of a budget problem. Up until this point, Stark has been bankrolling the team, paying for their equipment, facilities, and even their living expenses. They have been able to be full-time superheroes because of Stark's bank account. Imagine for a second if they didn't have that money. So there are a few things that need to get figured out financially. First and foremost is who will fund them. Will they go full bore with the UN situation and become an arm of the United Nations? Or will Stark's foundation cover them in some way? Or perhaps some secondary, as of yet unknown person will step up and take over the costs. For my money though, I would guess that, if this topic is discussed at all in the film, the Stark Foundation will probably be the solution. Does it make realistic sense? No, not really, but it is a solution that could be easily mentioned in a throwaway line that would solve the problem and not really pose any sort of problems going forward. If the Avengers became a UN-sponsored organization, for example, suddenly there is the potential for a lot of bureaucratic nonsense to get in the way of future stories, and nobody wants that. Of course, there is the possibility of Wakanda stepping up and paying for them, but that would technically make them an arm of a foreign power, and that would just be kind of weird. Still better than the UN solution, though. The next logistical question that comes up is whether or not they will stay in upstate New York. The current Avengers compound is in an old Stark facility, and depending on what happens in Endgame, might not be the best place for the team. Traditionally, the Avengers in the comics have been headquartered in New York City, which is an option, especially with Doctor Strange's New York sanctum being located there. They could just easily pack up their things and set up shop there, sleeping on his couch as it were. With those logistics kind of out of the way, we can now talk a bit about crafting a more powerful roster of heroes. The original team was certainly an effective one, but the roster was kind of a bit lacking, really only being made up of whoever the heck Nick Fury could find. If you want an example of how ramshackle the original roster was, you know who was once considered for a spot on the team? Abomination. Yeah, the bad guy from The Incredible Hulk was almost an Avenger. Of course, we instead got the Hulk himself, but it kind of just goes to show how throw something at the wall and see if it sticks the original idea of the team was. Now we're in a position where the team's lineup can be a bit more tuned to deal with cosmic threats. Obviously, the most fitting candidate for the team as it stands is Captain Marvel, a being who is powered by the Space Stone and who is arguably the most powerful hero in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we already know that she's going to be stepping up to lead the team, so she's kind of a shoo-in. Next up is Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme. This master of the mystic arts is incredibly powerful in his own right. I mean, he was able to go toe-to-toe with a powered-up Thanos, so he definitely packs quite a bit of a wallop. Only really one problem though is that he showed in Infinity War that he isn't the most team-oriented kind of person. He has a mission to defend Earth and doesn't really care about anyone or anything else. So will he be on the team? Probably, yeah, but will he be the best fit? Maybe not. Who knows though? Perhaps in Endgame, he'll learn to play nice. Next up is Spider-Man. Peter Parker is a bit of an interesting case. He's always been seen more as a street-level hero, not really on the level of cosmic beings such as Captain Marvel. And yet, he consistently faces off against some of Marvel's biggest threats in the comics. Now you could argue that that's largely due to the popularity of the character himself, but given what we've seen in the comics and the sheer utility of his power set within the MCU, he could fit quite nicely on the roster. Black Panther is up next, whose role on the team is a bit questionable. Sure, he definitely fits the team, serving largely the same role as Captain America did as the strategically minded one. But one has to wonder if he will even be down to sign up. As King of Wakanda, he has a lot of responsibilities already, and may not be able to find the time to serve as a full member of the Avengers. Perhaps he will instead fill in as a sort of break glass in case of emergency kind of member, only really showing up for the really big situations when he is needed the most. Then there's Ant-Man / the Wasp, whose connection to the quantum realm could make them a very valuable asset to the team, especially against someone like Kang the Conqueror, who himself is so closely tied to the realm. Heck, we may have even seen Kang's city of Chronopolis in 2018's Ant-Man and the Wasp, so Kang may be our next big threat, which would mean that Ant-Man and/or Wasp would make for great additions to the roster. We could also see members of the Guardians of the Galaxy become full-fledged Avengers as well, though I doubt that'll happen, since Disney will more than likely want to keep the Avengers and the Guardians largely separate. Now we gotta touch upon heroes that are not yet introduced that we may see join the team, specifically Shang-Chi, a master of Kung Fu who actually has the ability to create multiple copies of himself on a whim, as well as harnessing his chi powers. We know for sure that Disney is developing a Shang-Chi film, so he will be making an appearance in the MCU. Now, Shang-Chi is perhaps the most skilled fighter Marvel has at their disposal, having in the comics bested the likes of Captain America, Black Panther, and Black Widow in unarmed combat. He could easily be a powerful candidate for the new team. And with Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, Ant-Man, Wasp, Black Panther, and Shang-Chi on a team together, we could see the most powerful version of the Avengers yet, just in time to protect Earth from some greater threat from beyond the stars. What do you think the future version of the Avengers will look like? Which as of yet introduced Marvel character would you like to see join the team? An X-Men character perhaps? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to ScreenRant for even more awesome videos just like this one. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.